In the dimly lit funeral home, mourners gathered around the casket of Jonathan Hartley, a beloved member of the community who had passed away unexpectedly. As the priest concluded his final blessings, a heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the soft sobs of Jonathan's grieving family. As the last mourner filed out of the room, leaving the family alone with their grief, a chill settled over the room. Suddenly, a faint scratching noise echoed through the room, drawing the attention of Jonathan's widow, Sarah. She glanced nervously at the closed casket, her heart pounding in her chest. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. Her brother, Michael, frowned and shook his head. "It's probably just the old building settling. Don't worry about it." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept over her. As she stared at the closed casket, she could have sworn she saw it twitch ever so slightly. She blinked, convinced she was imagining things. Then, without warning, the lid of the casket creaked open, revealing the lifeless form of Jonathan lying inside. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in horror, while Michael stumbled backward in shock. But what happened next froze them both in terror. Jonathan's eyes snapped open, dull and lifeless, yet somehow filled with a malevolent energy. His lips curled into a grotesque smile as he slowly sat up, his movements stiff and jerky. "No," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with fear. "This can't be happening." But it was happening. With a guttural groan, Jonathan lurched out of the casket, his limbs moving with an unnatural stiffness. His family members recoiled in horror as he staggered toward them, his eyes locking onto them with a chilling intensity. "Run!" Michael shouted, his voice choked with terror. But there was nowhere to run. The doors of the funeral home were locked from the outside, trapping them in with the reanimated corpse of their loved one. With each step Jonathan took, the air grew colder, and the stench of death filled the room. Desperate, Sarah and Michael backed away, their hearts pounding in their chests. But no matter how fast they ran, Jonathan continued to pursue them, his movements relentless and inexorable. In a final, desperate bid for survival, Sarah grabbed a nearby candlestick and swung it at Jonathan with all her strength. The metal connected with his skull with a sickening thud, and for a moment, there was silence. But then, to their horror, Jonathan's body began to convulse, his limbs twitching and jerking as if possessed by some unseen force. And then, with a final, blood-curdling scream, he lunged at them, his cold, dead hands outstretched. And in that moment of terror, as Jonathan's family members faced the horrifying reality of the undead, they knew that they would never escape the nightmare that had come to life in the funeral home.